Welcome to Total Innovation, the podcast where we explore the different aspects of innovation, transformation, and change. From the disruptive minds of startup founders to the strategic meeting rooms of global giants and the thought leaders shaping the future, we bring you the stories of change makers. Each episode promises a fresh perspective from both sides of the mic. We embrace the diversity of thoughts, backgrounds, and experiences that drive corporate renewal and evolution. The Total Innovation journey will take us through the challenges, the victories, and the lessons learned in the ever-evolving landscape of innovation. Join us as we explore the narratives of those shaping the market, those writing about it, and those doing the hard work. This is Total Innovation, where every voice counts and every story matters. This podcast is brought to you by Wazoku, helping to change the world one idea at a time. Welcome to part 2 of the Total Innovation podcast series with Basler-Reeder from ExxonMobil. I'm sure you're as excited as I am to pick up the conversation from part 1, where we'd looked at the backgrounds and motivations to build the incredible scaled capability that Kyle has been able to deliver at ExxonMobil. In this episode, we're going to dig into lessons learned, scaling that capability, and so much more. We hope you enjoy part 2. We've got those kind of boots on the ground now, right? We've got a lot of people interested. The journey from potential open innovation project to something that's out in public, right? There's quite a lot of nervousness. You mentioned things like IP and legals and a million and one other organizational concerns that surface the second you want to start throwing out innovation, R&D, other types of what feel like very precious, sensitive, we can't share those with the world type challenges, can we, Kyle? Mm-hmm. And you do it. Like, what was your lesson learned in that bit of like, okay, I've identified a project to, I'm going to put something out live. And I know that you guys have done challenges where sometimes you have the brand on them and sometimes you do not. Like, any lessons that you can share in there as well from this is great too, because I know a lot of times things get stuck in that bit, right? It's just people can't get the sign off they need, or they can't get the data release they need, or something to push the challenge out.
Yeah. Well, what I would say is kind of my top challenges you need to address almost in your opening slide. As you're presenting, you need to almost instantaneously tell them, be at ease, I am going to address time, I'm going to address funding, I'm going to address people, I'm going to address IP. And yeah, one of the things that people find surprising is when I tell them, yeah, you can run these anonymously. That's a good thing to share pretty fast. And the other thing, I think some of it's just a culture journey. Okay, I think everybody wants to build IP. I can tell you the first time that I had a patent granted, I was all excited. I'm an inventor. I made this shiny novel thing that no one has ever made. It's very exciting. And that can be a culture locally on some teams. So for some folks, what I would say is the quote is the lab is their world. So they go in, they start doing their research, and everything that they love is in that room. And then they're saying, I'm not interested, and they're not going to come do a project, and that's okay. Now, for other people, the world is their lab, and these people. If you've worked in a big corporate, you're on a team, there's that person, and they're always talking about this conference. They're always sending these emails of this thing they found. Those are the people you have to find. And I actually have a metric on that. It's about 1 in 20 people that I have found, just looking at the numbers, about 1 in 20 people, they have the mindset, they're ready to go. Those are your first line. Those are the people that are going to get out there and go do it. You have to find these people, and that's the numbers game, right? And then you have to give enough logical, credible discussion. The people that start pushing back, you need to be able to address what they're saying. And guess what? Sometimes I wouldn't be able to address it, and that's okay. And I would say, you know what? That's a really good point. That is not a good fit for open innovation. We would absolutely not want to take something like that outside. Okay, does anybody else have something that we might take out? And so you're you're just addressing and you're admitting like this isn't going to work. But again, find the ones that it will work for, and those are the ones that are going to get everyone else in the game. And it's going to take some time. So be patient and be ready for some big failures. I got to tell you, these meetings can be not the most fun sometimes.
Yeah, you take some punches, right? But even in that 1 in 20 stat, which is fascinating to think about, because the organization the size of yours, that's a lot of people still, right? That you've
Yep.
got to go and educate and show and evidence. So we've kind of walked through this, right? As I said, we're sort of following a linear conversation here, from what led Kyle into this, to what led the organization into it, to how did we build the strategy and start to get things up and running. Um, what about success then? So what can you share about any notable successes that have come through the program? I've eulogized about the fact we've got this flywheel going. Like, what does success look like? Maybe a good place to start, and then what examples could you share of successes from an Exxon perspective, recognizing these things can take years,
Yep.
beyond the short challenge, to actually drive impact out the back end.
Yep. So I have, I have this funnel, the classic kind of early phase, and then these different stages. And when you get to the end of my funnel, I have 5 outcomes, is the way that I've organized it. The first one I call an indirect failure. So there's not really a direct thing that I can say we tried this and it failed. Indirect failure, about 15% of the time or so. What happens is we start going down this path, we have some discussion, and maybe they decide they don't want to do it. Maybe they decide it's not a good fit for this year. They put it on the shelf. Maybe we just can't get everybody aligned on the wording, something like this. So about 15% of the time, they don't go anywhere. I have an indirect success, which is like I didn't do an open innovation project again. So it's not like a direct success, but about 50% of the time. And that's usually where I just connect the team to an existing solution that's already in the company, or I connect them to a team and they're kind of off to the races and they're all excited. So about 65% of the projects, they don't proceed to open innovation in terms of outcome metrics. So when we look at the success projects, what I call a direct success, those are usually something where we find an idea that's a little bit higher TRL, so technology readiness level, from kind of 1 to 9. There's different systems you can use, but basically it's not, someone didn't give us an idea. They basically said, hey, here's this thing that's off the shelf over here. It might be in a different industry. It might be in a different country. You might be able to use that. Those are the things I think that have the most success. Now, we're pretty early days. Okay, we don't have a lot of time. Time will tell sort of on the failures, and time will tell on the 5th category I have, which is, I call it pending success. So I don't call it pending failure. I call it pending success, which means we have some ideas. Maybe we have 5 ideas that came. We're still kind of working through those. Maybe we've looked at 1 or 2. It looks good. We're going to kind of pursue those first. If those don't pan out, we might look at some of the other ideas. I believe this process will take me 3 to 5 years of runtime before I can start to talk a lot about where did this not work? Where does it work really well? Now, those direct success projects, again, finding something off the shelf is always good. We're finding some really good ideas, like with crowdsourcing platforms. You get these new ideas. Those are some things that I find very exciting. I can't say they're all ringing the cash register yet, but I can say that pretty much every open innovation project that we've done, the quote is always about the same, which is, wow, you found us a lot of new things that we've never seen before. That happens pretty much every time. So I think that's a really good indicator that, 5 years from now, I'll be able to talk about, how did this actually pan out? What are the real statistics on success and failure? And then, okay, in terms of a failure, what often happens, you might go and try to find something. Let's say that you look at all the results and there was nothing there. I don't give up there. Okay, so a couple things we can do. We can, if we did something internal crowd, let's go external crowd. If we did external crowd, let's try an internal crowd. Let's go talk to other teams. There's a lot of different ways you can kind of pivot those efforts. So even the failure cases, I would say, I'm still exploring, and I'm saying, well, let's try something else. Let's frame the problem differently. Let's zoom out. Let's zoom in. So it's going to take some time to kind of sort through all those. As I said, successes, those are usually something we can kind of plug in. But that's only because we've only been online for less than 2 years. Yep. So time will tell.
quite often when people launch these things, there's a couple of things that kind of blow people's minds. I think one is that, how can a crowd that have this much information versus all that we have as an organization and a set of subject matter experts help us find something new and novel? And that, the idea that the long tail will always outnumber, the number of experts and adjacent experts in long tail will always outnumber even the brilliant subject matter experts that you guys can hire in-house is one of it. But also a lot of these are very unlikely, champions, right? They're unlikely successful.
Yeah.
They don't have the resume to necessarily suggest that they would do those things. The second is the length and the detail that you get in a lot of these submissions. Is that something that you can resonate with as well in terms of what comes back? And the second side of that is then how do you manage those evaluations, right? Like, is it a lot of work? Is it, how do you plan for that?
Yeah. So first of all, I'll try to answer three different things here. So first of all, we're a big company, over 150 years of history, lots of capability, lots of depth in a lot of things. However, what's outside? Roughly 1.1 billion freelancers. So there's over 1 billion people out there. They can come in, they can help you, and then they'll go work on something else. So they're there, they're ready to help. Number two on that, about 600 million entrepreneurs are out there, and they are founding 300 million companies a year. If you think of a success rate of about 10%, that means that there's 30 million new companies coming every year. So there's a lot of new stuff that's out there. That's how to summarize. So yeah, number one, absolutely, there is huge value outside of our company, even though it is huge with a lot of capability. Number two, in terms of kind of these things that we're receiving back, I have been absolutely blown away to see the diversity in the background. Just the geographic diversity is astounding. You pull up an open innovation project, people, I always, on the first slide of every project, we always show the map. You don't annotate it. You don't do anything on it. You just show the map of the world. You say, okay, yeah, all of these countries in yellow, those are the ones where we received submissions from. And I think people, they just instantaneously snap and they say, okay, I get it. I'm in line. I'm snapped in. This makes sense. We have looked all over the world. And, personally, some of these countries, I have to go on Google and look it up. I don't even know where some of these are. It's been really interesting to learn about some of these countries have these innovation mandates nationally. And there's a lot of people out there that are using these platforms. And then, yes, do these people, kind of fit the hiring profile? A lot of these people, we'll get submissions from a small business owner in a different country. And they're just saying, hey, here's how I've looked at that problem before. It's fascinating, frankly. And then the results we're getting. Yes, we have received a 200-page submission, a 200-page Word doc. Somebody basically took their PhD thesis and then they updated it and then they added a bunch onto it. And so, okay, now that document, those are really hard to digest. So I would say, as a seeker, my advice to solvers would be try to summarize up front so that we can digest quickly. Now, some projects, you can get 100 submissions. That can be quite challenging. The strategy that I've been taking is first of all, I like teams to go through and identify the ideas that you clearly already know about. We try to put those into our challenges. We try to very carefully say, these are all the ways we've tried to solve it. Here's what we know about them. We try to be as open as humanly possible to guide our solvers away from things that we've already tried. But the first thing, I think the first pass is let's kind of cut the things that we already know about. And then the second pass, I try to get teams to divide and conquer if you can. Try to work with multiple individuals and say, okay, you do 10, you do 10, you do 10. I think once you're getting past about 20 or 30, I think you're kind of getting where it's going to be hard for one person to really go through all that. And then what we're doing there is the same thing. Like, let's highlight the ones that, we don't think they're going to work. Like, do they have a showstopper? Is there something in there it's not going to fit? So we're trying to cut. And then I bring everyone back together, and then we go through one at a time. We'll do 2 2-hour workshops typically. And now we're going to talk about the what's possible. Well, what if? Will this work? Does it fit in our site, etc.? So that's kind of how I'm doing it. I'm still learning, but I find that this cutting exercise, I think that is probably the most efficient way to go. We do get 1-sentence proposals, and we have awarded one of those. Okay, so if you have an idea and you think, well, I mean, I'll just put this in there into the platform, go ahead and do it, because that idea might just be the one that we like. So be aware. These don't have to be long, and then again, if they are very long, please try to make them small. Some of these folks, they have 60 proposals to go through, and sometimes it is really only one person doing it.
Yeah, I think that piece of advice is actually we get often asked by solvers, like, what's the optimal length? And I was like, it depends on the quality, right? But I think the 2-page summary is probably the optimal length. I didn't know that you'd awarded a 1-line answer, but it's good that tweets.
Yeah. I love telling people that. I love telling that story. Yeah.
So we're getting close to the end, Kyle, and I want to be respectful of your time as well. Just a little bit for the audience about what next, right? Like, what does the future direction look like for you? If you could wave a magic wand, I guess, but also, more practically than that, like, where's this going now?
Well, let's go back to these eras, right? We had the sort of analysis era. We had the preparation era, kind of laying the foundation, getting the platforms in place. We had the marketing era, getting out there, knocking on doors. We're out of the marketing era, okay? We are firmly in what I call the execution era. Now, people are coming organically. I don't have to knock on doors every week. They're just coming. I do like to reconnect. I do like to go give these seminars, but now at a higher level. Now I am doing the 100 to 200 people now, because I'm having those people present, and that's a game changer. So we're in this execution era right now. That's where I'd say where we are. We're trying to learn, if you build one of these programs, your portfolio management system will be tested. It's been tested for me. As soon as I got to about 50 projects, it became unwieldy to use like Excel. Okay, it's not going to work. You do like a Kanban board or whatever you're going to do. You're getting into the 200s of projects, it's going to start to get unwieldy and be tested. So we're in this phase of like, how do we manage these projects? Things I'm really focused on, templates. If somebody has a question, I want a template for that. The first time they ask, I make a template. Second time somebody asks, I send them a template. A nice web page, easy to use, self-help, building champions, getting these people empowered. Here's the resource library. I have a really nice web page with all those. Remember all those PowerPoints I made 2 years ago? Those are all nicely organized and categorized now, cleaned up. People can go there. I have people reporting to me, quote, I'm using your web page every day. That's great, because then they're not sending me the questions in the emails. So building that champion network. Moving forward, where are we going? We're going to get into what I would call the era of optimization. Execution is going to keep going on. We're going to keep executing these projects. We're going to get better and better and better. Now, how do we optimize this program? How many people do we need here? I don't know what the answer is. I know that we need more than me. I know that a company this large, we need a handful of folks that are going to help do the marketing, the stakeholder alignment, working with folks like yourself, kind of these external engagements, these types of interviews, raising awareness. So I don't know how many people that is. That's going to come, I think, over time. And then really looking way out on the horizon, I'm looking at AI. And I know it's on everybody's mind, but I can actually say I've done research in this space for many years. We were using GPT-2 a long time ago. So I have a real vision for a lot of the things that we're doing on the front end. I think that you can have at least sort of like a chatbot trained to really help people navigate that front end. Is this right for going external? How much time do you have? How much money do you have? Et cetera, et cetera. What's the right recommendation? And then maybe asking some of these questions, instead of going to my webpage, maybe like a bot kind of thing. So I'm really interested in that. I'm interested in AI assisted external landscaping, internal landscaping, retrieval augmented generation, et cetera. So those are the things that I would say are on like the 5 to 10 year time frame.
Amazing. I think you said early on in this conversation, your discovery that innovation was a science, and I think it is a mix. I was on a panel recently debating, is it an art or a science? My conclusion was it's both, but
Yeah.
my suggestion was it was both. But you've
Yep.
really taken to this as a science, right? You've clearly thought it through. Your planning in each of these eras, as you call them, has been meticulous, and the era of optimization is going to be great. As you know, we're working on some of these kind of portfolio and the AIing of the Kyle bots or whatever it ends up getting called.
Yep. Yep.
On this stuff that we're exploring and talking about. So as we wrap up, like, what advice do you have? Maybe your top 3 bits of advice for individuals, for future Kyles, right, to
Okay.
get started.
So I love mentoring people both inside and outside the company. One thing I've learned through reading about how to be a good mentor is don't give people the advice of what worked for you, because it's not going to work for everybody. And I always tell people, get out there and talk to other people. Whether it's an intern, whether it's a new hire, whether it's a student outside the company. Go have conversations. I think that is by far the number one thing I could say. If you're getting started, particularly in open innovation, because we are trained in working externally and being open. We get it. I understand that helping you with your program, you might have some nuggets that you share back to me. And so that's the number one thing I would say by far. Number 2, you need to be organized. You need to have something that is clear. If somebody asks you, what are you up to? Don't open up your calendar and your email. You need to have a place that people can go and they can see, so that when you get those questions, well, how many projects do you have right now? You don't want to have to go and manually set that up. I used to do it kind of manually every now and then when I would get asked. Now, a nice dashboard, anybody can go there. You can see all my projects. So organization, I think, is really key. And the sooner you do it, the better. And think about scale. Think about, what if I had 1,000 projects in here? That's not an Excel spreadsheet, okay? That's got to be something else. So think about scaling and organization. And then I think number 3, if you don't have it, figure out a way to train it or something. But you got to have some grit, okay? This is going to take a sustained effort. You're going to have some challenging conversations. And I tell people the following. Open innovation requires 2 things. Number 1, you have to go outside and work externally. That's very challenging for some people. I'm sure it's better at some companies than others. Other groups, it's better than others. But going externally in general, that can be kind of hard. Number 2, we're talking about innovation, new ideas. You have the not invented here culture is a known effect. So I'm asking teams to simultaneously work externally and overcome not invented here culture at the same time. That's going to be too much for a lot of teams, a lot of folks. So be patient with them. Be prepared for this culture change journey that you're going to be on. It's not about just executing projects. It's about empathy. It's about the people, and it's about your patience. Be patient. The wins will come. Those first 10 to 20 presentations I gave, I got some brutal feedback. It was brutal. But I evolved, and guess what? That 30th presentation, I felt pretty confident. Nowadays, now I can go have an external conversation, and I'm comfortable with that. So be patient with yourself. Have some grit. Try to get some space. Especially the first year, I think. Don't rush too hard to just going for the biggest high value things right away. You certainly need to do that in the area of execution. But in that early analysis phase, the early onboarding phase, try to get some space from your management so that you can explore. And really, every organization is going to be different, right? So you're going to need some time to take whatever's in the books, in the podcasts, and what people like me say. Your organization is going to be different. So you're going to need some time and try to get that in place.
Yeah, I think that mindset of get ready to take some kicks, as we've said, like it's like the entrepreneurial journey. It takes me back to the early days of pitching this business idea and getting thrown out of rooms and wondering what the hell we were doing. And eventually you find the fit, right? The culture fit, the language fit, the approach, and everything else. So I think, look, the people could do worse than reaching out to you. You've spoken to many, many folk, both internally and externally. So. And I appreciate the fact that you want to give some of that back now and help. So finally, for our listeners, how can they follow your work, and if they want to get in touch with you for more questions?
Yeah, so an external web portal is in the works, but in the meantime, I try to post a lot of my learnings. I try to post every branded challenge that we run. It's going to be posted on my LinkedIn account. Feel free to connect on there, follow on there. That's probably the best place as of recording. TBD on sort of an external web portal, I think would be really nice. Showcase some of our projects and things like that. But that's in the works.
That's exciting, Kyle. And listen, thank you very much. I think, there's a lot of helpful tips, so many. I appreciate the fact that you try and summarize some of those bullet points as we go through, and we'll pull some of those out for our listeners to circulate, as well as your LinkedIn kind of profile to share as well. So thank you very much. Thank you to everybody for listening to this episode of the Total Innovation Podcast. Please subscribe for updates on upcoming shows and for all things Total Innovation. Check out Wazoku at www.wazoku.com. And thank you, Kyle, again for your time today. It's been incredible.
Thank you for the great discussion.